Welcome to the Plato Paradigm, a paradigm shift in reading Plato's dialogues. Episode 149, Meno 98d to 99a. Socrates is currently misremembering the conversation he has had with Meno since the time they began to hypothesize about arete being something teachable. Socrates has dovetailed it into the conversation they are currently having about episteme and aletheis doxa, true opinion, which had not been in the previous conversation. Episteme had been part of the previous conversation, but true opinion had not. The hypothesis was that if arete is something teachable, then it has to be some sort of episteme, on the assumption that episteme is what is taught. Socrates had then pointed out that arete had something to do with benefit and the beneficial, and therefore the type of episteme concerned had to be phronesis, because only phronesis leads to beneficial ends. Phronesis is the proper functioning of the lungs where the soul resides, and Cicero had translated phronesis as prudentia, which is why we translate it as prudence. In Greek philosophy, prudence is either one of the four cardinal virtues or the virtue altogether, of which there are four aspects, being courage, wisdom, or sophia, expertise, justice, and sound-mindedness. Sophrosune, which comes from the same root as phronesis. When phronesis is one of the four cardinal virtues, it replaces sophia. It all depends on which philosopher is presenting the virtues, or in the case of Plato, which dialogue. In this perverse recollection of the previous conversation, Socrates has just described how they came to the conclusion then that good people are not good by nature. This is actually correct, and the reason why people are not good by nature is that were they to have been good by nature, we would have seen people who can identify good people putting babies or children into towers, locking them up until they are old enough to be beneficial for the city. Since we don't see good people being locked up for this purpose, that it follows, according to the argument, that good people are not good by nature. Of course, this argument exploits Meno's concrete view of things, as if someone who is good has to have been good since birth, since goodness is a thing, and that isn't the sort of thing that passes from one person to another. We should note that the good people in this discussion are serving as a bridge between right opinion and arete, virtue, which is now going to be the subject and which was the subject of the original hypothesis. Good people naturally lead to arete, since arete is the characteristic of good people and good things. Epede degu fuse escopumen to metatuto e didacton estin. Nay, since not by nature, we examined after this whether it is something teachable. We should note that Socrates still hasn't mentioned arete. It's not very clear what is this something teachable. Meno should have asked if Socrates is still talking about episteme, understanding, or aletheis doxa, true opinion, or orthodoxa, correct opinion, or whether he has returned to the original discussion where they were talking about arete. Uk un didacton edoxen enai, e phronesis he arete. Nai. Well then, it did seem to be something teachable if virtue is prudence. Yes. In fact, virtue seemed to be something teachable if it were episteme. The point about prudence is that arete, virtue, is also beneficial, and we needed a sort of episteme which is beneficial, and that, Socrates decided, is phronesis, prudence. So once again, Socrates is providing a highly inaccurate summary of the previous argument. And if indeed it were something teachable, it seemed that it would be prudence. Absolutely. Again, Socrates is skipping the whole part about these being beneficial. Kai men ge didaskaloi en didaktonan enai, me ontonde u didakton. Huto. And if there were teachers, it seemed that it would be something teachable, but if there were no teachers, it seemed that it would not be something teachable. Thus, this was the weakest link in the whole argument, and yet this was what was the longest part of the argument, proving that there were no teachers. Of course, it is not the case that if there are no teachers, the subject is not teachable. Socrates stretched this part of the argument out, I suggest, to allow Meno some time to come to the conclusion that possibly this is a wrong conclusion, that in fact, even if there are no teachers, arete can be taught. Even now, Socrates is giving him another chance. Alamen homologekamen me enai autu didaskalus, esti tauta. But we have agreed that there are no teachers of it, neuter. Arete is feminine. This is the case. Homologekamen ara mete didakton auto mete phronesin enai, panuge. So we have agreed that it is neither something teachable nor prudence. Absolutely. I emphasized the word it in the last sentence because it's very pronounced in the Greek. Arete is a feminine noun, and yet Socrates uses a neuter absolute pronoun, which is a strong way to say it itself, which we can add to the fact that Meno and consequently Socrates have been describing arete with adjectives in the neuter singular, which is why I have been saying something teachable, something exercisable, something learnable. This emphasizes that Meno regards arete and all abstract words as concrete things. And this is why he also treats every possibility as exclusive. Arete is either something teachable or something exercisable, and so on, since for Meno these are all different things. We may recall that in Socrates' first response to the first question by Meno at the beginning of the dialogue, he gave a reply in which arete came to appear to be a mixture of all the possible options. And of course, Meno didn't pick up on it. Alamen agathonge auto homologumen enai, nai. And yet we agree that it is something good. Yes, The mention of good here comes a bit out of order after talking about prudence rather than before. Ophelimon te kagathone naito orthos hegumenon panuge. But the thing leading correctly is beneficial and good? Absolutely. And we're back to the later conversation, the one about going to Larissa. The beneficial is finally mentioned, but it hasn't been mentioned at all in the summary of the previous argument. It is only now, when talking about leading correctly, that suddenly the beneficial is back. And at this very moment, virtue disappears. The conversation has come back to episteme, understanding, knowledge, and alethes doxa, true opinion. Orthos de gehegestai duo on tautomona, doxante alethe kai epistemen, ha echon anthropos orthos hegetai, tagar apotychistinos orthos gignomena uk anthropine hegemonia gignetai, honde anthropos hegemonestin epita orthon, duo tauta, doxa alethes kai episteme. Dokemoi huto. And we agree that these two alone guide correctly true opinion and understanding, having which a man leads correctly. We have to take into account the ambiguity of the verb. It can also mean thinks correctly. For the things that come about correctly by some chance come about not by human leadership, hegemony. But with regard to things which a person is a leader towards the correct, these two, true opinion and understanding. It seems to me thus. We should note that Socrates goes out of his way to make sure that we understand that hegestai, the verb to lead, means here to lead and not to think or to believe as it could. And he does this by using, in addition, the word hegemonia, leadership, which in no way can be construed as thinking or believing. Socrates expects Meno to understand the verb to mean to lead. He may also have hoped for Meno to consider the possibility that believing correctly is beneficial, and that believing correctly requires understanding, or, as he so eloquently argues here, true opinion. We may understand that thinking correctly is beneficial. Opining correctly doesn't really make much sense.